With the second round of the playoffs in full swing, one of the biggest talked about topics from the last week or so of games has been in Bruins Panthers, the Sam Bennett hit on Brad Marchand in game three. Um, it was a bit of a controversial one. We're not going to show it here because we're going to get copyright strike to hell if we do. But if you want to go look it up, if you haven't seen it already, basically Bennett's coming down the ice. Marchand gets in his path, and Bennett just kind of takes a shot at him. Very much looks like an intentional sort of shove. Marchand goes down awkwardly. He's injured. He's out games 4 and 5, and lots of conversation about whether Bennett should have faced any disciplinary action. I don't believe he did. Um, and really controversial, particularly among Bruins fans. And Marchand came out and talked about it for the first time. I believe this was today, as of recording on
I think
Thursday.
so. Yeah.
And I think his quote kind of stirred the pot even a little bit more. Saying he believed that Bennett kind of got, this isn't direct quote yet, but he said like believe Bennett kind of got a shot in on him in terms of saying he believes it was a bit intentional. Then he goes on to say this. This is a quote from him. He said, "It's part of the game. It's part of the playoffs. People don't want to say it, but part of the playoffs is trying to hurt every player on the other teams. And the more guys you take out, the more advantage your team has. People don't say that, but it's just a fact of the game. So every time you step onto the ice, someone's trying to hurt someone, and that's just how it goes in the playoffs. That's part of the benefit of having a physical group." And he went on to say something along the lines of not holding any ill will towards Bennett because of what he just said, in terms of he
Yeah.
believes it's part of the game where people will try to hurt people on the other team, try to intentionally injure them to an extent, especially in playoffs. To what extent? Obviously, Marchand is probably would be one of the biggest perpetrators of this, if true. But to what extent do you think this is true?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a very, very true statement. And that was what I was gonna say originally when you first brought it up. I remember when you brought up this segment, it was you who brought up this segment for us to talk about. And when you said that quote, I was thinking the same thing in my head. Why would Brad Marchand be mad about someone taking a run at him when Brad Marchand's done that his entire career? And I think it says a lot that he is coming out and saying it, because if it is surprising to anyone out there that the Bruins have done that, clearly you have not watched a lot of those Bruins runs, and that's not a hit at the Bruins, because it's just a fact of hockey. Everybody knows when playoffs comes around, and you see the star player on the ice, you maybe take a whack at his shins. You want to slow him down. You want to slow him down however you can, and that is something that it's not exactly hidden. If you talk to pretty much any hockey player, they'd be able to tell you that. And it's not surprising at all to see Brad Marchand just go, yeah, no, that's what happens. That's what Sam Bennett was doing, and I have no ill will towards him for doing it. If anything, it's a compliment. That's how I'd look at it personally. Like, and that's
Yeah.
just the way I look at it as someone who grew up playing hockey. Is if you're the player getting whacked, or if you're getting chased down by those ugly hits, it means you're doing something right. And I think that's kind of the way that a player like Brad Marchand has to look at it. It's the fact that if you are being the target of that, and of course it knocked him out for a few games. He's not happy about it, but the fact that he has no ill will, of course, yeah, no, that's no shit for me. I feel like you could list names upon names of Brad Marchand doing similar things to other players, and it's he not to say he had it coming, because I actually like Brad Marchand as a player, and I know that's a big you shouldn't say that. Everyone hates Marchand, but I like watching Marchand play. I feel like for the most part, I always have. Not to say I agree with all the antics he gets up to, but I've always liked that brand of hockey a little bit. Just get under people's skin, and I think he does it best. If anybody, if he's coming out and saying it, it's probably true. Is probably my biggest takeaway from this, at least personally.
Yeah. And I think that I totally agree with you. I think just the biggest reason this is kind of like top billing news for me, honestly, is just the way that he it's just the way he put it too.
Yeah,
Because I think of the explanation you gave in terms of Like, of course, in the playoffs, like if the star player's going to come by, like you're going to give him a tap in the shins, like that kind of thing. I think that I hear that part of it, and I don't really bat an eye. Whereas when Marchand comes out and say like, "Oh yeah, like we're trying to injure people on the other
But
team," I
that's
just feel like
okay.
that has such a different
Can I
connotation.
can I emphasize the
Um,
fact that I kind of mean the same thing in the fact of like maybe not injure, but you're definitely trying to make sure they can't skate as fast. Would be my
yeah,
lawyer
and
standing
I
in the
think
corner
yeah,
answer.
yeah. Well, no. No, that was my point exactly. I think
Okay,
it's
yeah.
just like in the way you say it. Because I do think it's interesting. Like that is a normal part of hockey culture, in terms of like you're gonna try to slow the star player down. You're gonna try to make him fight for every inch on the ice. Like that is normal. But I think it's just the way Marchand comes out and says directly, "We're trying to injure people on the other team," where I think that just kind of takes you. It's just very blunt. I think is the big thing. It's
What are
very
you gonna
blunt
do
to
about it?
just say, "Oh yeah, like we're trying to injure the other team." I think that's kind of the big thing because for me it brings up stuff like Bountygate in the NFL, where that
Yes.
was like because they had the whole that's obviously a lot more organized, where the Saints had an actual program to say, like, "Oh yeah, if you injure this player, you get this amount of money." Not the same thing, but it brings up
Yes.
similar kind of issues.
And I will say I would be very
It's
very
a lot
shocked to
less
hear that
organized.
there's I was going to say the difference I think mainly is the money thing. I don't think that's happening. I don't think a coach is
Yeah.
going somebody
Oh
take
God, no. God,
Brad
no. God,
Marchand
no.
out of the game, I'll give you 10 grand. That's not happening. No way in hell. Because that would get caught instantly.
Not at all.
It's a different age now where no one would be able to get away with that. But is a coach tapping a guy like Sam Bennett on the back and going, "Brad Marchand's playing a little bit too good out there. Maybe make him watch a little bit more. Make him have to pay attention a little bit more." Is a coach doing that? Yes. That is happening. It's playoff hockey. It's what happens, right? It's when there's a guy when you know who's you're up on the ice against. It's that type of thing, right? Where it's almost the type of thing where a coach doesn't have to say it. I'd say that's the biggest difference. You're never going to see a Bountygate in the NHL because it's not something that needs to be said. When you're a physical player like
Yeah.
Sam Bennett, a guy who plays physically, a guy who's not afraid to lay out hits like that, you know when you're on the ice against a guy like Brad Marchand, and you know when he has the puck on his stick that that's exactly what you're trying to do. Maybe it's not to injure him, but you're definitely trying to at least put that thought in the back of Marchand's head, right? You want to make sure he's thinking about it. You want to make sure that when he has the puck on his stick, he's not thinking about where he's trying to put that puck. He's looking behind him for where number 9 on the Florida Panthers is. That's what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that conversation is like that's where I think Marchand is wrong in term to up to a certain point, just because of the again I'm kind of repeating my point here, but just in terms of the connotation of the language of
Yeah.
injure. Like when I think injure, I think like in like a torn ACL, like a big injury, like getting knocked out. Whereas like you're gonna make a guy hurt. I think you're
Yeah,
gonna
I
make
guess
him
there is a
like
difference. I think
have to go to the ice bath and like really just like you're
yeah,
gonna be
that's
very sore the next
but I
day.
do
I
think
think
that's
that's a
what he
different
meant.
thing.
I think that's what he meant. I think there
I
is
think
very
so
much a
too.
difference between
I think
injure
there's a
and hurt.
misinterpretation
Yeah.
broadly of what he's saying, and I don't think he fully portrayed what he was meant to say. Because I think it
Yeah.
sounds a lot worse than what he means.
It's still bad. If you're not used to
It's
a
still
hockey
bad.
environment, it's still bad. I can say though, like growing up around it and growing up, especially in like later years on a couple teams that I played for, where I definitely had a bit more fun knocking people around. I think I can definitely say that's definitely there, but I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. Injuring is very different than hurting, right? That is the big thing.
Yeah.
You wanna put somebody on the bench. It's because hockey is such a mental game. At least that's the way that I look at it. I don't think you're necessarily trying to hurt them so that they can't play. You're trying to hurt them from playing well. And you start by putting that thought in the back of their head, right? Because the last thing Marchand wants after getting hit by Sam Bennett like that is for Sam Bennett to do it again. So when Marchand has the puck on his stick and he's skating up the boards in that same way that he was doing it in that play, he's going to be thinking a little bit differently than he was on that play, right? And that's what Sam Bennett wants. That's what the Florida Panthers want. And that's the way I look at it, where I don't think that Sam Bennett was trying to hurt Marchand, like injure him. I don't think that Marchand thinks that Bennett was trying to injure him. I think that it's kind of just a code. I don't know. I feel like if Marchand actually came out and went, I think that Sam Bennett was trying to put me out for the rest of the playoffs, it'd be a lot bigger of a story, and I'd have a very different opinion on it. But watching Sam Bennett for all the years we did in Calgary and just seeing the type of player he is, I don't think he was trying to injure Marchand. It's just not his style. Bennett's always been a very physical player. He's not afraid to get in people's faces. He's not afraid of many people in the NHL, and I just don't think that's his style. I don't think he's necessarily a dirty player. I think that he just saw a chance to lay one on one of the best players on the Bruins and took it. So at least that's again. I feel like we're kind of dancing in circles a little bit because it always happens when there's a segment where we both agree on something, where we both keep repeating the same points. But
I'll throw a different grenade into the equation then here.
Sure.
Where I'll put up this. Obviously, I don't think the NHL will be happy that he said this. I don't think, even if it is a part of hockey culture in general, I don't think the NHL is going to appreciate a player coming out and saying, I intended to everybody intends to injure each other in the playoffs, even if it is kind of an unspoken thing. Do you think he'll face I don't think suspension, obviously not. No, God no. But do you think he'll be fined for saying this? Like, where do you think that kind of falls in the real discipline?
I really hope not, but I guess I could see it. People have been fined for a lot less. So, who knows? If he faces a fine, I guess I wouldn't be shocked. I think my question, if I'm going to throw it back over to you, well, I guess, do you think he'll be fined? I'll throw that to you first. But
I don't think so, but I wouldn't be shocked if they make a motion to say we are investigating these comments or whatever. I think that it will be mentioned. You know, they'll make some sort of gesture, but nothing will happen.
And that's exactly what I was about to ask after that, actually, is do you think that this is something that after Marchand comes out, because I can't really remember a player coming out and actually saying it. I guess to me, it's always just been something that I kind of figured everyone knew. But now that Marchand has brought it into the light and everyone knows about it if they didn't already, I guess my question is, if there is actually an uproar about it and there is actually a conversation about it and people are like, oh, hockey players are being stupid and they're all trying to injure each other and it's all barbaric and all that, do you think there is a conversation in the offseason about refereeing more in the playoffs? Because it's always been known that referees are a lot more relaxed in the playoffs, to put it lightly. And they don't call as much, and they definitely have a more let-them-play attitude. Do you think that style of refereeing and that sort of thing is going to get called into the light, and maybe we see that conversation had of should referees be letting the players basically play this barbaric brand of hockey, even if it is entertaining? Do you think that is a conversation that gets had, or do you think this is something that just gets swept under the rug?
I don't think that's the conversation that will be had. Because I do think there will be kind of... I think it depends how big the story gets. I think if this starts getting into more major news networks and starts getting... Which I doubt it will, but I think if the quote kind of goes more viral than it is and starts getting to more of an audience who isn't as familiar with hockey, then I think the NHL might be forced to do what I kind of said, where they say they're kind of investigating it. I think that would be as far as it goes. I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be a refereeing thing. Yeah, pretty much. It'd be more of a gesture than anything. But I do think, to the point of refereeing it further, I don't necessarily know that that's gonna change anything, even if you do. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think the refs are gonna be. like it's a player thing. Like it's a
Yep.
Marchand is bringing into question the intent of the players on the ice. Intent is the big thing.
Yep.
And I think that's what would be investigated if at all, because I don't think the NHL, like we said, it would never happen in the NHL. But I don't think the NHL wants a Bountygate type situation to happen.
Yeah. Well, and
So
exactly.
they'd look into it. They're not going to find anything, and then I think at that point it'll get swept under the rug, and people will forget about it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the only thing that'll ever happen, and I think most like enforcers would tell you this too, is just the fact that all you're ever gonna get is a pat on the shoulder and go get 'em, champ. That is all. That is all that is being said, and the player knows what to do, and it's as simple as that, right? Like it's not an actual Bountygate thing. That enforcer isn't making more money because Brad Marchand is going to have CTE later in life. That's not how it works. Like there is no incentive. It's just plain old playoff hockey. And I mean it's also just like it doesn't even have to be a coach tapping it on the shoulder, like I said. It could just be Sam Bennett playing Sam Bennett hockey. Sam Bennett saw Marchand skating along the boards and said, "Ooh, yuppie," and then absolutely knocked him on his ass. That's what I'm picturing in my head. Like it's just that's playoff hockey, right? It's just the type of thing where you do not want to let a star player get comfortable, and that's exactly what they did. I like
Yep.
to me,
Yep. I
it's
think.
Marchand just said exactly what playoff hockey strategy is. You all the players who can afford to sit in the box for 2 minutes without their team necessarily getting all screwed and all that, they're not necessarily worried about taking a trip, I guess.